Thank you. Welcome to CSOL's webinar, Mergers and Acquisitions, the impacts on your laboratory informatics systems. First, I'd like to introduce myself to you all. My name is Michael Barkin. As Megan stated earlier, I'm a senior informatics consultant. My specialties are strategic consulting, validation, LIMS, and chromatography data systems. I've also had the opportunity in a past life and in current life to work with companies on acquisitions where laboratories needed to be harmonized and integrated. I've been consulting now for approximately 5 years in many different industries, consumer products, pharma, biopharma, etc. So I've worked in the regulated fields as well as the non-regulated fields, although in my previous life, I have over 20 years of experience in an FDA-regulated field specific to pharmaceuticals. I have a master's in chemistry. I have my Microsoft certifications. I've taught and been trained and trained others on data integrity and pharmaceutical compliance. I'm also the corporate quality manager for CSOLs. I've been a documentation specialist and done things in chromatography data systems and LIMS systems. So I'd span the gamut in experience. So let's look at today's agenda. When you talk about acquisitions or mergers, the first gut reaction that organizations have is they're scary. And we're going to talk a little bit about that because acquisitions being scary can be a driver within the organization and can be a detriment. We're going to understand those drivers of change, and we're going to help show you how you can help influence changes that will be made within the future. We're going to talk about the transitions that companies make, how it impacts the users, and ultimately, you want to talk about how to succeed in those trying times. So first, we want to talk about the life cycle of acquisitions. First of all, an acquisition is kept in the dark at the beginning where you're talking about the feasibility of an acquisition. That's business folks meeting, talking about the possibility of two companies becoming one, whether it's an acquisition or a merger. Then legal gets involved and they agree on a deal between the two companies. And then once the deal is agreed to, then they have to fund the acquisition. Somebody's purchasing somebody, it could be stock, it could be cash, etc. And the planning for funding for this acquisition is coming from one company, which is spending that money to obtain a benefit. And then ultimately, it's the completion of the deal. A lot of legal stuff, due diligence, etc. But at the end of the completion of the deal, the business folks celebrate because it's been accomplished. However, from a laboratory perspective, that's where the hard work begins. That's where the two sets of laboratories need to start thinking together more as one. And there's a lot of hard work and negotiation that needs to go on in the laboratory to make the acquisition successful. And we're going to talk about that. So what are the secrets to a successful merger or acquisition? And I call it the 3 C's. You need to collaborate, you need to consolidate, and there must be a cost benefit. And you need to be able to show those 3 things. And we're going to talk about all 3 of these intermixed throughout this presentation. But these are things that you as a person in the laboratory would need to act on as far as collaboration. Management is looking to consolidate. And of course, they're looking for a cost benefit. So it's very helpful to determine what type of acquisition you may be involved in. Well, was the acquisition made due to one company wanting a product line extension? And we're going to talk about this in more detail in the next slide. Or is it that the acquisition was made to accelerate products to market based on technology or other things within manufacturing? Or is it just a melding of two similar organizations, too similar in size and function, etc.? Or is one company potentially purchasing a company to get into a new and different market? Now let's talk a little bit about the differences between those types of acquisitions and ultimately how it could impact the laboratory. So let's talk about line extensions. When one company acquires another company, obtaining a line extension or a product from another company, those types of acquisitions go through rapid change. The product would end up fitting into the purchasing company's systems, and people tend to have a difficult time catching up. So a new product is coming in, it's a line extension, there's lab testing involved, the lab testing gets thrown over the fence to the lab, methods, etc., and it happens very, very quickly. Another type of acquisition is acceleration to market. This initially changes to systems are slow because you want speed to market, so you don't want to make too many changes to the systems or the lab that's in place to help push that product to market. So you won't change those systems too quickly. Third type is similar organizations. These occur probably at a moderate pace. Why? Because management is making determinations from the two companies and trying to cherry pick the best possible solutions. And this is where, as a laboratory administrator, you could have the most influence on a change that's going to be made, because it's at a moderate pace and you can share information with them to influence the prospective change. And then the last acquisition is a new market. And in a new market, changes are made moderately to slowly because management themselves may not even understand the new market, and they need to learn about the new product, the new market, etc. So they're not going to change things too quickly. That change is probably one of the slowest changes that can take place. And it's important in a laboratory to know which category you're in because you can prepare. So,
hey, Mike.
The next, yes.
You cut out there right at the end. Almost sounds like you might have walked away and then come right back. Can you just repeat that last part?
Sure. So the last type of change is a new market, and changes are made very slowly, tend to be made very slowly within a new market because management is learning about that new market, and they don't want to make any changes until they fully understand that market moving forward. So the laboratory changes in effect would be slow in that as well. Okay. So how does the staff feel about this stuff? They know the acquisition has occurred. You're in one company or in another, but the commonality is the questions that the lab folks tend to ask is, which systems and records are going to be in scope to change? And ultimately, what does it mean for the staffing? Will there be downsizing? How will morale potentially be impacted in both companies? And that's something that needs to be managed, especially when people are implementing change. How many sites are impacted by the acquisition? Will the purchasing company mandate change? In other words, will the change come down from management and you must do it or else? Is that something that you feel that the new organization will do? And then what exactly are going to be the future single system requirements? Because you're merging two systems and two cultures. And from a compliance standpoint, you have two quality organizations, and one of the organizations may take on more risk than the other. And those organizations are being melded into one, and they must be in agreement so that they can trickle down corporate policy to you, so you'll know how much detail you need to follow with respect to compliance, especially for informatics system compliance. Management is going to have budgetary considerations, things like licensing costs for two systems and wanting to save money by just moving forward with one. There's also a fear of changing systems because typically users have been using similar systems for many years, and then all of a sudden the carpet is pulled out from under them and they need to work with a new system, learn it, and be able to function to do their job. And deep down, some users may even feel that the status quo and keeping things the same is safe and makes them feel more comfortable.